Thank you very much, Ilsa, and good morning, everyone. And I must say that the older you get, the better your resume starts to sound. I'm not sure it's a good thing, but I appreciate those kind remarks. And it is a pleasure to be here today to make some comments. And then if there are any questions, Rafi's asked me if I would take questions, and I would be delighted to do so. But it is a pleasure to be here to contribute to what is an extremely important discussion: job creation, innovation in the knowledge economy. And I extend my hat and congratulations to Rafi, Ilsa, the team, but particularly to Senator Grafstein for putting together this extremely impressive group on this extremely important agenda. And Senator Grafstein does it because he cares, which is the right reason. Now, I've been asked to talk about jobs, banks, and small business, which is a pretty daunting topic. I guess if I could do justice to just one of those topics, it would be sufficient. But it gives me lots of scope to talk about a lot of different things. But I will try to sort of focus a little bit on today's agenda and a little bit about how RBC and banks play a role in today's agenda. And my perspectives have certainly been influenced by not only 3 decades of work across the financial services industry, but as Ilsa said, with an interest and involvement in this area, concerns around the productivity levels in Canada, my previous roles with the Toronto Regional Research Alliance, and now currently in my position as chair of MaRS, although I must say I have a hard time saying that I am chairman of MaRS because, as Ilsa said, the real chairman of MaRS, the heart and soul and visionary behind MaRS is Dr. John Evans. I wish there was a title like mini chair because you can never step into John's shoes in terms of what he did, not just for this organization, for our country. So it's a real honor to have stepped into that role following John's wonderful work. Now, the New York Times reports that there is a little white brick cafe in Greensboro, Alabama called the Pie Lab, which brings people together to eat pie and to generate ideas. And their formula goes something like this: Pie Lab equals a neutral place plus a slice of pie. A neutral place plus a slice of pie makes conversation. Conversation equals ideas plus design, and ideas plus design equals positive change. Now, MaRS, to some degree, is Pie Lab minus the pie. The premise is that innovation does not happen in isolation. It happens when people interact, it happens when they debate, when they discuss, and in doing so, they foster innovation with a purpose. And to a large degree, that's what MaRS is. It is, I view it as a bit of a melting pot for intellectual capital. Some of the greatest and best science in the world takes place in these walls. There is business, there is legal, there is even the arts that comes into this institution. And all of that, as I say, provides a wonderful forum for discussion and collaboration. I'm always marveled when we get our monthly reports as to what goes on and what is generated from this institution. Arthur Stephen Johnson defines innovation as occurring when we take ideas from other people, from people we've learned from people we run into in the coffee shop, and we stitch them together into new forms and we create something new. This means that we have to change some of our models of what innovation and deep thinking really looks like. He calls this the liquid network, an environment that enables the coming together of ideas in sometimes unpredictable but satisfying combinations. Job creation, the success of our entrepreneurial class, and our economic vitality here in Canada depends on the creation of these so-called liquid networks. And it is especially now as we stand poised at a new and significant inflection point in our history. We're dealing with the aftershocks of the financial crisis, including the grumblings that we're hearing over new protectionist attitudes and popular distrust of traditional social frameworks. We've seen the rise of countries like China and India, the BRIC countries, as new economic superpowers that are not only producing goods through traditional low-cost labor, but are now producing great science, value-added, leading technology. The world is continuing to globalize, notwithstanding the pressures around trade and so forth, and we have to figure out how we compete in a global world rather than in a North American footprint. And of course, issues like global warming, the growing tensions between rich resource and poor countries. They're large, powerful trends, and they raise a multiple of questions for our country. What will our role be as the world faces these social, political, and economic challenges? How do we participate more fully for the benefit of our country, Canada, and those countries that we connect with? How do we as a country recognize and act on our relative strengths as well as our weaknesses? Now, we're fortunate to have a number of significant natural gifts, if you will. Firstly, we live in the second largest territorial mass in the world, a mass that's rich with natural resources, including increasingly scarce resource of clean water. At 34 million people, we're a small country, but in a large mass, we have the ability to continue to take in more immigrants per capita than virtually any other country in the world, a source of great strength in the building and the development of our country. We're one of the few nations that hasn't and doesn't have to deal with the experience of war. It's been over 2 centuries since there's been a war in our home grounds, and we are adjacent to what is still, notwithstanding how problematic the economy is in the United States, still the largest economy in the world, and of course that provides some significant benefit. The World Economic Forum considered Canada to be one of the bright lights during the recent recession, thanks to our strong fiscal policies and to some degree the strength of our banking sector. But in short, we are a young country that has not grown up with some of the stresses or disadvantages of others. Our collective memory is of political and economic stability, strong health and educational infrastructure, good social safety nets, and peace. And we are well positioned to achieve any and all the goals that we've set for ourselves. But, and there's always a but, we have to rise to the occasion, and we certainly can't be complacent. Because as good as our story is, our standard of living has faltered, and we have not kept pace with global developments, particularly in areas like innovation and R&D, key components of our future success. Our economic success remains rooted in our natural resources rather than in innovation and the knowledge economy, which is going to be critical to future success. We need a better way to translate research and ideas into viable commercial successes that create jobs and new businesses and represent Canada well on the global stage. We have to transform our economies and look to the future rather than relying on some of the natural advantages we've had in the past. Now, earlier this month, the Globe and Mail announced the findings of a C-suite survey, which puts the blame for Canada's poor track record on innovation squarely on C-suite executives. According to my peers who were polled for this study, the 2 top factors important in explaining Canada's weak productivity is business leaders' risk aversion and a culture in this country to some degree of complacency. The World Economic Forum finds that Canada's competitive position has slipped from 9th to 10th place and warns that we need to improve innovation, increase research and development, and produce higher value on the value chain. We did receive some good marks. We ranked first in the world for having minimum procedures for starting a new business, and I must say, very pleased to see that. And we ranked a respectable 9th for the time required to start a new business. This is an important success since Canada's small business employs nearly half of the private sector workforce, and in 2008 were responsible for 21% of the total value of exports with an average value of $1.5 million per firm. Here in Toronto, it's even more important. Stats Canada reports that our city experienced the country's highest small business growth rate between 2008 and 2009 at 7.5%, well ahead of the national average of 2.7%. It also found that we are home to a self-employed population in excess of 240,000, the highest number in Canada. But our bad marks include ranking 24th and 19th respectively on the ease of access to loan and venture capital financing, a key topic for today's discussions. Equally troubling, we were 20th in company spending on R&D and 19th in our capacity for innovation. Now that tied us with Iceland, China, and Slovenia. In other words, it's easy in this country to start a new business, but it's difficult to transform that business into a global leader. Yes, we have some great examples of world-class innovation, companies like RIM, Research in Motion, or Bombardier, SNC-Lavalin, and even our banking system is a world leader when it comes to innovation. But we need more examples and more action. It's time to stop spending on our future and start investing it. And of course, innovation, R&D, and venture capital. Those are the equations that have to be solved. And as everyone in this room knows, they're all very interrelated. Now, I say this because Canada's later productivity level in the business sector has been lower than, for instance, the United States for almost all of the last 50 years. And a recent report by the Institute of Competitiveness and Prosperity shows that if GDP per capita, if the gap between the US and Canada were closed, the Canadian families would have an additional $12,200 more in personal disposable income right across the country. Now, that's a compelling carrot for encouraging innovation and increase in our productivity. And there's also a stick. Our population is aging, and underwriting their retirement years in healthcare will present a fiscal challenge like most of the developed world. Competitiveness, efficiency, and productivity will be more important than ever. No province has a greater requirement to redefine and to transform its economy than right here in Ontario. We face no serious obstacles to taking action except for our complacency with the status quo. As a small country, however, we have to develop strategies that fit our profile, competitive advantages, as well as our political realities. Now, MaRS, I believe, is a wonderful made-in-Canada strategy. Our future standard of living will get its sustenance from a supportive, collaborative environment for entrepreneurship and more successful commercialization of innovation. Collaboration rather than competition across our institutions, like MaRS Innovation as an example, helps compensate for our size disadvantage. We also need to encourage diversity and immigration that can generate variability and velocity of idea generation, and thus commercialization, synergies, and jobs. Small populations tend to increase a country's need to outsource ideas and knowledge, and today, Canada has a small population by virtually any standard. Pundits predict that our population will reach close to 50 million by mid-century, but accelerating this growth through immigration will exponentially expand our collective intellectual vibrancy and our connection with and the understanding with other markets around the world. What really matters to innovation is not how smart individuals are, but how collectively the brain is. Now, as mentioned, I also co-chair TRIAC, the Toronto Region Immigration Employment Council. I believe that immigration is one of Canada's great competitive advantages. In a world where most countries are closing their borders, closing their doors, we have an opportunity as a young and small country to take advantage of immigration in terms of driving commercial success that has helped develop this country so successfully.